Thomas Jefferson once said, governments constantly choose between telling lies and fighting wars, with the end result always being the same. One will always lead to the other. Keep this in mind as we discuss today the recent declaration or statement by the CIA director, William Burns, that China is sending drones to Russia. My name is Dr. David Wallaru.
And my name is Elizabeth Ann Stewart.
And you are watching Geopolitics in Conflict.
China could be considering offering lethal support, weapons to Russia to help fight Ukraine.
From day one, President Biden warned President Xi not to provide material lethal assistance to Russia for use against Ukraine.
You announced another $2.5 billion in aid to Ukraine today, $113 billion now. We know the vast majority of Americans support Ukraine, but there are now many who are asking, how long can we spend like this?
It's perhaps never been more important to ask, how do I differentiate between facts and fiction? Why and how some elites and wealthiest individuals in the world seem to know what's coming before it happens? The short answer is they create the circumstances in their favor. They also know how to read the world stage, spot the patterns, and learn from trends. They focus on key information and do not get lost in information overload. They focus on what's important and avoid wasting time and energy on irrelevant issues. And above all, they all know how to implement the information they acquire to achieve their goals. We offer a course, No Nonsense Politics, that teaches you to think critically and use the information to achieve your goals, whatever they may be. So, if you want to get ahead, be the master of your own destiny, and reach your goals, as well as having an online community of people who think for themselves just like you, check out the link in the description box below. All right, let's see what's going on with this topic.
Well, this is an interesting development because there's been a lot of warnings coming from the White House and coming from the United States warning China not to send lethal aid to Russia. Well, so this is an interesting piece of information to come out as the US is doing that. Don't you think?
Yeah, well, for them to say that the CIA director, because the moment you hear CIA directors, that means is confirmed. Well, hold on a second. What makes you think that what the CIA director is saying is true?
Well,
Yeah, that's the question that we need to ask. It's common sense, Because here's the thing. Do you know where the statement came from?
So other than the CIA director,
Yes.
you mean the officials that they came from that are unnamed and their sources are unnamed? Is that what you're talking about?
That's the one, but
Okay.
also the source outside the United States. I did find out.
Okay.
It came out from an entity inside Ukraine. It's called Kiev Independent News Desk.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what a lot of people did not know. It came out and stated that CIA Director Bill Burns confirmed that China is considering sending little aid to Russia in its war against Ukraine. I was like, wait a minute. First of all, the source of this entity, which, by the way, this is not even a news outlet in Ukraine. It's an independent one working privately along with the military and the government inside Ukraine to push the narrative.
Well,
because here's the thing. What happened with this? Right after this statement came out, Burns came out and stated, and I quote here, "We are confident that the Chinese leadership is considering the provision of lethal equipment," end of quote. He added that China has not yet made a decision.
Yes, that China has not yet made a decision. And that's very interesting because this entire story really has to do with mind games. So when you look at war is a game of chess. Or checkers, depending on how you look at it, right? Or how sophisticated you are at it. But war is a game of chess. And what are you playing with? You're playing with the minds of the people who have to support your war. And so when you're looking at information, any piece of information that you're getting, including from us, from anyone, when you're looking at any piece of information, you have to ask, what is the motivation for whoever is disseminating the information or spreading that information, right? So there is a clear interest here in the United States wanting people to think that these drones are real, right? That China selling or being in talks to sell Russia these drones is real. However, there is the other side of that too, where China has sort of, it appears to me, and I would like your opinion too on this, David, that China is perhaps trying to downplay their relationship with Russia, because the diplomat Wang Yi did come out and say, we are allied with Russia. That happened fairly recently.
That was a week ago. Yeah,
it was a week ago. Yeah. And then China has been saying, oh, well, we are absolutely neutral in this Ukraine conflict. However, they did propose a peace plan, how to de-escalate the situation and bring peace to the situation.
I have a chance to read the 12 points, and very, very pragmatic.
They
very
are
logical.
Pragmatic, yeah.
And the idea of why the West, the United States already rejected it. Because like I said last time, the West would not want the peace to be achieved, let alone through a country that is outside the Western world. Right. That's the bottom line to it. So the reason why China also maintaining that strategic position, and rightly so, is because China does not want to upset the order that made it rich, first of all. Yep. And second, it's going to trigger more tensions between China and the United States. We're already looking at the quadrupling of the numbers of US troops in Taiwan. Right. We're already looking at the Secretary of NATO's recent trip to, and we did a video on all this stuff here. So that's the whole idea of it, because, or the proxy war in Philippines between the United States and China. So China is very strategic in its thinking. This is one thing we don't understand about how the Chinese think. We don't understand that because the West, we approach things differently. That's why I feel comfortable saying, I'm in the process of writing a book about China. And I am lost. I'll admit it, I'm lost at really trying to figure out, to connect the dots. But when you go over 3,000, 5,000 years of history, you can see why today the Western world will be unable to understand how China thinks or process information. And this is exactly what we are seeing with China is being strategic in its statements, so forth. Yes, the friendship and I will use the term partnership now between China and Russia wasn't created in a vacuum. We created it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We did this one, so we shouldn't be blaming China or Russia why they're getting closer. And second, who are we to decide for which country, the sovereign state? They can build the relations with whomever they want.
Absolutely. And, one of the points that you brought up, it's a little bit hypocritical. And, I'm not advocating for China in any way. And I'm not advocating for Russia in any way. But looking at the facts, the Western world keeps saying China don't aid Russia while they are aiding the Ukraine. And so it is a little bit hypocritical.
Double standard.
Is it not? Is it not a double standard?
Yeah.
And, I understand because the United States is the hegemon, because it is the empire that is sort of the top right now, that the US sort of has gotten to dictate how things have gone for a long time. Yeah. But as that's starting to switch out, I think it's not lost on us here in the United States that our strength is failing internally. We have a lot of conflict between, the right and the left. We have a lower standard of living for many, many people. Our infrastructure is kind of crumbling. Yeah. And, there's good people here. There's good, kind, wonderful people here. And, people can see the decline of the United States externally and internally. And so it's kind of putting us in an interesting position right now. I remember when we were being presented with the war in Iraq, I was very young, but I remember this well. George W. Bush, he came on the TV And he said, we have to bring democracy to Iraq. We have to liberate those people because they are under this tyrant and it is a horrible life for them. And that's the reason that we're going in, right? That's the reason that we're going into Iraq. And I remember, because I was very young, and I remember sitting and thinking, oh, he must be honest. He must really want to help these people. But with these two wars, the one in Taiwan that is building up, whether that will turn into one or not, we don't know, and this one in Ukraine, I can't quite figure out what the story is that they told us. Why exactly is it that we're in these places, right?
Yeah.
To liberate them from what? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What is the stated reason that we're in these places? I know at the beginning of Ukraine, it was because we were going to liberate the Ukrainian from the Russian attack, right? What do you think of that?
Yeah, it's just hypes. That's all. We've been always doing this one. So just to go back to our topic here, as far as the CIA statements, you look at the idea of, not the idea, but rather the attack on the Nord Stream 2.
Right.
So who was behind it? It was the CIA and Norway. And yet the idea was the moment that happened, all the news and information that was disseminated and propagated to the rest of the world that Russian did it and so forth. Some of us who've been in Washington inside, we kind of know how the system works. You tie it back also to the Iraq invasion, how it was sold on a faulty intelligence at the time. The late Colin Powell, he was manipulated into saying what he said. You look at the Afghan war that took 20 years, even though indications were right 2 or 3 years after that became clear and evident that we're not going to win this conflict. So this is no different than now. Because the rest of the world will be questioning, how can we trust the Americans? We lost credibility. That's the bottom line to it. So
well, and sort of rightfully so. And you're talking about Nord Stream 2. The motivation, because you're right, initially, and they knew it, and Russia knows that. They know that the moment anything happens, they're going to be blamed for it. Because remember what happened with Poland.
Oh yeah.
Remember when Poland got hit and they thought it was immediately they said it was Russia, but it wasn't. It was actually Ukraine.
Ukraine turns out to be Ukraine. And that's the whole idea for even in 2014.
Yeah.
Did you know that in 2014? Actually, I'm sorry, not 2014. Just before the start of the incursion in February 24th, 2022. Only 1 month before, Ukrainians were marching about 110,000 soldiers to Donbas area.
That's a lot.
Which was never disclosed. And they were shelling some of that parts of the country. So it just shows you what they're saying versus what the reality is.
Right.
Two opposite.
Right.
And we're going to be talking detail on a live stream on this. So we'll be having live streams every Friday. So we will be talking more detail about this one here because when CIA is involved, there is usually another story.
So this is a CIA related story, but this is also very interesting. So, one of, I think this was, Newsweek. I think it was Newsweek that reported this, right? So they have somebody who came on who is an expert on drones. And he talks about how the Chinese made drones would be receiving battlefield testing in Ukraine. So, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah.
So one of the things that there's a former CIA operative that is actually a very brilliant guy. He was on the Lex Friedman podcast, and he's kind of making the rounds for a lot of these podcasts. Very, very smart man. And he actually said a very similar thing about the United States and what the US is doing with a lot of its weaponry in preparation for figuring out how to logistically move a lot of large weapons to the other side of the world. And sort of battlefield testing how that flow would work. And so it's very interesting that here we also are seeing battlefield testing. We're also seeing that language coming out of a news outlet, coming from an expert. So I'm just putting those linguistics there together. A former CIA operative and this professional both talking about battlefield testing weapons.
Yeah. A lot of people will not understand this kind of differences linguistically because you have to have a background in understanding, first of all, what the issues are. And when you look at with all due respect to everybody here, just when you look at an average Joe, average Jane,
Right.
this is going to be one thing that they don't even care for stuff like this. This is why prompt us to really address this topic. And we're going to be, as I said earlier, we're going to be talking detail about this in a live stream. So I hope you guys can join us. So, any final thoughts on this before we close it out?
Just that, if you are watching this, you're somebody who pays attention to the deeper story.
Exactly. And that's the whole reason for why we decided to do the course. And we're going to do another course on this time on the government inside. We got a lot to say about that.
We got a lot to say. If you guys want to check that out, check out our website at geopoliticsinconflict.com.
Yeah. Well, we hope you find it very informative. And as always, prepare yourself for changing world order. Till next time, guys. Bye-bye.